母语学习法的学习素材要有3个特点：一、使用的素材要足够简单；二、必须要包含情景，而不是孤立的记忆单词或者语法；三、需要大量聆听和模仿，制造沉浸的语言环境。所以我做了这个根据电影改编的英文故事来给大家练习听力，学习英语的同时可以了解到历史。另外，中国的泰缅远征军也有一部分为这段死亡铁路牺牲的，就在桂河大桥旁，就是中国军人的孤军墓。我们开始吧。
This story unfolds during the difficult years of World War II in a steamy green jungle in Thailand, where the wide River Kwai carved its path. Here, a group of British soldiers found themselves prisoners of war, far from their homes. Their leader was a man named Nicholson. He was very strict and believed deeply in rules, order, and doing things the proper British way. Even as a prisoner, he wanted his men to stand tall and be proud. They were marched to a new prison camp, deep in this Thai jungle. This camp was run by a Japanese leader named Saito. Saito had a very important, urgent job. He had to build a strong bridge over the River Kwai, right there in Thailand. A railway line needed to go over it, to carry supplies for the Japanese army in their war effort. Saito was under great pressure. If the bridge wasn't finished on time, he would be in serious trouble and face great shame. He was a proud man and did not want to fail. When Nicholson and his soldiers arrived, Saito announced, "You will all work to build this bridge. Officers too." Nicholson stood very straight and replied firmly, "No. The international rules of war state that officer prisoners are not required to do manual labor." Saito became furious. His face turned red. "I am the commander here," he shouted. "You will obey my orders." But Nicholson did not change his mind. "We are soldiers. We live by our code and the rules." This made Saito even more enraged. He felt Nicholson was looking down on him. So, Saito punished Nicholson harshly. He forced Nicholson to stay in a small, scorching, hot tin hut, like an oven, under the blazing sun, with very little food or water. Other officers were also punished, but Nicholson refused to break. He thought to himself, "If we give up our discipline, we give up who we are. We must set an example." Many days passed. The ordinary soldiers, without their officers guiding them properly, struggled to build the bridge. They didn't have the right skills, and progress was very slow. Saito grew more and more anxious as his deadline loomed. He realized that without Nicholson's cooperation and the officers organizing the work, the bridge would be a disaster. He was desperate. He even wept in private from the stress and fear of failure. Finally, with a heavy heart, Saito knew he had to yield. He went to Nicholson, who was physically weakened, but whose spirit remained unbroken. Saito agreed that the officers would not do the heavy lifting, but would supervise the men. For Nicholson, this was a significant victory. He had upheld his principles. Now, Nicholson had a new focus. "If we must build a bridge," he declared to his officers, "then we shall build a proper bridge, a fine piece of British engineering. It will show the Japanese what we are capable of. It will give our men purpose and restore their morale." And so, Nicholson took complete control of the bridge construction. He became an engineer, a driving force. He drew up plans, organized the men into efficient teams, and demanded better tools and more food from Saito to ensure the work could be done well. Saito, wanting only for the bridge to be completed, mostly agreed. Nicholson became obsessed with the bridge. It was his bridge. He wanted it to be a perfect monument to British skill and resilience. He pushed his men relentlessly, even those who were sick. He believed it was for their own good, for their discipline. Some of his own officers, like either the camp doctor, Clipton, grew uneasy. Clipton watched Nicholson and thought, "He has forgotten we are prisoners building a bridge for the enemy in this world war. This has become a point of pride, not of war." But Nicholson saw only the magnificent structure rising from the river, a testament, he believed, to the British spirit. Meanwhile, far from the camp, an American soldier named Shears was tasting freedom. He had been a prisoner in Saito's camp before Nicholson's arrival. Shears was a practical man, a survivor, not much for rules like Nicholson. His main goal had been to escape, and he had succeeded after a dangerous journey through the jungle, helped by kind villagers. Shears thought his troubles were over when he reached Allied territory. He dreamed of rest and safety. But the military had other ideas. They knew about the vital bridge being built on the River Kwai for the Japanese war effort. They needed someone familiar with the area to lead a small commando team back to destroy it. And Shears was that man. Shears argued, he pleaded, he felt he'd done his part, but ultimately, he was a soldier and he was ordered back. He found himself guiding a small, determined team, including a tough, experienced commando named Warden and a young, eager soldier named Joyce, back into the dangerous jungle. Their mission, to blow up the very bridge Nicholson was now completing with such painstaking pride. Their journey was perilous. Warden was injured, but pressed on. They carried heavy packs of explosives. Their plan was to demolish the bridge just as the first important enemy train, filled with troops and supplies for the war, was due to cross it. Back at the River Kwai, Nicholson's bridge was finished. It was indeed a strong, impressive wooden structure. Nicholson inspected it with immense satisfaction. He even had a wooden plaque made, stating it was built by the officers and men of Lieutenant Colonel Nicholson's battalion. He planned a small ceremony for its official opening. He truly believed he had achieved something remarkable, a symbol of British character triumphing over adversity. He had become so engrossed in the act of building, he'd lost sight of the bridge's purpose in World War II. The night before the scheduled train arrival, Shears, Warden, and Joyce stealthily made their way to the bridge. Under the cover of darkness, with Japanese patrols nearby, they planted the plastic explosives on the bridge supports. They ran wires from the charges to a detonator hidden on the riverbank. It was a nerve-wracking operation. The next morning, the bridge stood ready. Nicholson and his men were assembled for the opening. Saito and other Japanese soldiers were also present, Saito now showing a grudging respect for Nicholson's achievement. In the distance, the faint whistle of the approaching train could be heard. Hidden amongst the trees on the riverbank, Shears, Joyce, and Warden lay in wait. Joyce had his hand on the plunger of the detonator, ready for Warden's signal. But then, disaster struck. The river's water level had dropped slightly overnight. As Nicholson stood proudly surveying his masterpiece, his sharp eyes caught something out of place near one of the bridge supports, a thin wire, partially exposed by the receding water. Odd, Nicholson muttered to himself, his mind solely on the perfection of his bridge. He didn't immediately recognize it as sabotage, but as a flaw, an imperfection. "Saito!" he called out. "There's a wire down there. Something needs checking." Nicholson and Saito went down to the river's edge to investigate. From his hiding spot, Joyce saw them approaching the wire connected to his detonator. He tensed. Warden signaled him to stay calm, but Nicholson and Saito were getting dangerously close. Saito, seeing the wire lead towards the hidden Joyce, suddenly realized the truth. Sabotage. He drew his officer's sword and lunged at Joyce, stabbing the young commando. "Saito!" Shears yelled. Seeing Joyce fall, he leaped from cover, firing his weapon and killing Saito. Instantly, Japanese soldiers opened fire. Shears, desperately trying to reach the detonator to complete the mission, was hit by a hail of bullets and fell, dead. From his vantage point on the hill, Warden saw his team being wiped out. In a desperate attempt to salvage the mission or create a diversion, he fired his mortar. The shell exploded near the riverbank close to the bridge. Nicholson, caught in the chaos and the mortar blast, was mortally wounded. He stumbled. In that terrible, clear moment as he saw the dying commandos, perhaps recognizing Shears or the British uniforms. The full, horrifying reality of his actions seemed to crash down upon him. His bridge, his monument, was a tool for his enemies in this global war, and now men were dying to destroy it, and he had tried to protect it. "What have I done?" he whispered, his voice filled with anguish. As he collapsed, his body fell directly onto the plunger of the detonator. With a deafening roar, the bridge on the River Kwai in Thailand, Nicholson's pride and obsession, erupted in a massive explosion of wood and fire just as the enemy train began to steam onto it. The train, the bridge, and many soldiers plunged into the churning waters below. The camp doctor, Clipton, who had run towards the commotion, stood on the riverbank, gazing at the horrific scene of destruction, the twisted wreckage, the bodies, the end of all that effort. He shook his head slowly, his voice a hollow whisper against the sudden silence. "Madness! Madness!" And so, the great bridge, a source of such pride and such folly, was gone, leaving only a story of how even good intentions, when blinded by obsession during the desperate times of war, can lead to terrible ends.
你太棒了，你学完了全部内容，你离英语自由又近了一步，下个视频见。